Fantastic. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever in the world you are. My name is Valerie Hope, and I am your host and your coach for Time to Come Alive. This program really, for me, is an opportunity to help someone get more conscious of him or herself. And I found that works for me too. Also to connect with meaningful conversations with people and to connect people with one another, as well as just become more creative. The outcome is generally creating something special, something that's worthy, or something that's an expression of ourselves in the world. And today is no different. In just a moment, we'll have an opportunity to meet our special guest for today. Before we get started, just want to encourage you, if you're watching this on live stream, to share this, check in and share this with your community online. You might also invite people to join the conversation, especially those that are really passionate about what we're going to talk about today, which is shaking up education and how to be a disruptor in your own life. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But I also want you to be mindful that as you're listening to the conversation, if you hear something or you have a question about something, you may type it into the chat. You might also ask it out loud when we get to a point in the conversation. I'll ask for you to unmute yourself and to share whatever's on your mind, either an insight or a question that you might have for my guest today. As customary on this program, I love to prepare the listeners for how they're going to listen to our conversation. So we're just going to take a moment to be mindful. In order for that to happen, I'd like for you to make sure that you're sitting, wherever you're sitting or standing, to get comfortable, to feel grounded. And because our subject today, it requires a little bit of movement, I incorporate that into our session today as well. So here's how we're going to do it. I'd like for you to think about, first of all, something that maybe there's some tension in your body. I want you to notice where that tension is. It might be helpful for some of you to either close your eyes or just soften your gaze so that you can be aware of that tension. And as you're finding where that tension is, I just want you to shake it out. So perhaps in your neck, just gently shake it out. Perhaps you find that tension in your shoulders. You're going to shake out your shoulders a little bit. Like a little Latin dance in here. Shake it. Take a few deep breaths as you're doing that. Expel that energy. Perhaps you feel tension in your arms. You're going to shake your arms out. And as you're doing, continue to breathe. Wherever you find there's tightness, whether that's your legs, your torso, just gently shake it out. Part of it is noticing where the tension is. And the other part is just not getting attached to the tension, not holding on to the tension. Part of it's breathing your tension out, shaking it out, right? Readjusting the muscles, readjusting the blood flow so that you get a little bit more relaxation. You want to really just allow your body to settle into itself without your muscles feeling like you're having to constrain. And you might also think about your mind. Now, there are places in your mind that are tight, that there's some tension. Perhaps the subject might create a little bit of that for you. I'm just going to encourage you as you listen to our conversation today to shake it out as well. There's nothing to get attached to here. Whatever sits with you that really resonates, take it in. And if it doesn't, put it to the side. Not essential that you agree with anything that you hear today or that you take it on in any significant way. All right, so if there's, notice some tension in your body or in your mind, shake it off. All right, take another couple of deep cleansing breaths. All right, and then come back to us. Good. I want to just start off by saying a few things about my guest before I have her formally introduce herself. I had the fortune of connecting serendipitously with Dr. Addyson-Zhang here because she had a former student, Marisela, so shout out to you, Marisela, if you're listening to this. And in our conversation with Marisela, I was talking to her a little bit about what I'm doing and the business that I'm in, but also more importantly, we're talking about learning and some of the things that she learned from a marketing professor that she had. I thought, oh my gosh, this person's pretty phenomenal. Well, she mentioned to me that this professor had her own program, podcast, and she was online, and like, you might want to connect with her, Valerie. And I thought, well, why not? So I ended up checking out Dr. I actually ended up going to your LinkedIn page first, and I just read up a little bit on what you did. And then I also saw that I think I just sent you a message letting you know, hey, I met Maricela, former student of yours. She said that would be great to connect with you. And there you go. And I literally was just expecting a connection, like a LinkedIn connection. Click yes, and there you go. But then I saw some things that you posted on your profile, and I noticed that you did an interview with Seth Godin, and I noticed some of the things that you talked about in disrupting education, and I was like, whoa. And then I think your response, you even said that you're trying to build a classroom without walls. And I love learning. My brand of learning is more experiential, and I thought, oh, I need to definitely have a conversation with you. And then in our very brief conversation a few weeks ago, I was just in love with your energy, how effusive you were, and your enthusiasm about doing something that so few people, I think, really, not only, I'm sure people question a lot, but don't seem to always do a lot about. And that's the education system, especially coming from someone that has been in academia for so long. So I just, first of all, I want to just say thank you so much. And then also I want to appreciate you for being open to having this conversation and sharing with us your journey.
Oh, that is such a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much for having me. And I have to say, I have grown so much since I had her as a student, and so much. I think the biggest difference is I really have embraced what I do as a practitioner. I think that, going back to education, I actually did a video, I think on Friday on LinkedIn, and I discussed why 50% of American colleges are going to go bankrupt in the next 10 to 15 years. First of all, that prediction didn't come from me. It was a prediction made by a business school Harvard professor. So anyway, in my video, I discussed one of the reasons is we have so many educators who are just educators. I think, if we are teaching social media, psychology, business, marketing, we also have to become practitioners. So I have definitely improved a lot since I had her as a student. So yeah. But thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the things that I also found really fascinating when you and I spoke was your journey to this part of your life. Talk to us a little bit about where you're from, and then also how that played a part in what you found a cause or purpose in today.
Yeah, so originally I was born in China, but I left China in my early 20s to come to the United States to study. So the reason I'm so, we were just talking about this earlier, obsessed with transforming education was really because what a horrible experience I had when I was a kid in China. I mean, I did pretty well in school, but I didn't enjoy learning. And learning was kind of just like memorization of facts and information. And it's really, really stressful, extremely competitive, and lots of exams. And I remember the schools I attended, like every time we had so many exams. So every time after a big exam was over, and there's a big wall, like a kind of like a window, and every single student's grade was displayed on that huge wall. I don't even know what it's called. It's just like huge. So you can literally see every single kid's grade. It was humiliating if you were not doing well. So I grew up in that type of environment. But coming to the US, I experienced a different kind of education, which rekindled my interest in learning. So that's kind of how I restarted on this journey. And the more I'm on this journey, I think the more I started to see there are also similarities in terms of our educational system between the US and China. And the last 2 years, we were in South Korea. And so I also saw similarities between the US educational system, Chinese educational system, and South Korean educational system. And I started to really, a few years ago, I started to share stories of my personal journey, education, and social media. And I started to discover people in different countries, in the UK, in some European countries, in Brazil, and they all face similar issues. I was like, wow. So I think all those things inspired me to do something about this and to be the change that I wanted to see in the classroom.
I love that. I especially want to call back a little bit to your childhood, because I think one of the things that struck me is, especially here in the US, the Asian education seems to be the yardstick, right, for the commitment to education, the competitiveness, like you said. And it's curious because your experience was that was not a positive environment for you. So I want you to talk to us a little bit about your family dynamic that made education such a focal point. Like, what was it like in your home as far as in education?
Yeah, I think that was the only thing we talked about. We were just talking about this earlier. I think nowadays, even in the US a little bit, but definitely the case in my friends in Korea, China, Singapore, and learning is very outcome driven. So we don't really care, like parents or maybe even teachers, they don't really care about the journey of learning. But you and I, we agree that learning is enjoyable, right? I love learning. It is such a fun journey. You feel like you are growing and you are expanding who you are, and you are improving your personal life and trying to bring changes to other people's life. It is such an enjoyable journey. But back then, when I was a kid, and nobody cared about the journey of learning. Like my parents only cared about the outcome. Like, what grade did you get, A or A plus? And are you going to go to a good high school? Starting with, are you going to go to a good primary school, then elementary school, and high school, and then college? So it's just one after another. And the funny part was, I didn't really think much about this entire experience. I just knew I didn't really enjoy this, but everybody was in the similar boat. We are all in the same situation. So you don't really question that much about it when everybody's doing the same thing. I was like, I just took it as my fate. I didn't really think about it. It is like, like in China, when I was a kid, we had one child policy. So when I came to the US in my early 20s, one question that people ask me all the time was, how do you feel about being the one child? I'll say, you know what? I don't really know, because nobody ever asked me this question. And I never asked myself this question because all of my friends, everybody was not only child. It's like fish in the water. You don't really ask, oh, what is water? Like the air we're breathing right now. What is this thing? You have no frame of reference, right? So that was kind of the educational system I was in. I suffered, I did well, I didn't really question. So the questioning part really started when I was in the United States. I had a different frame of reference. So that's why I'm such an advocate of traveling and being outside of your comfort zone, going to an unfamiliar environment. My first personal transformation happened after I came to the United States. That was my personal transformation, trying to discover who I was, my authentic self. And my second, which is my professional transformation, happened after we came to Korea, like 3 years ago. That was the time when I started to realize how my professional identity was really a result of the influence of the higher educational environment in the United States. Like, again, because I was in that environment, like all of my friends were professors, they did this, they did that. I didn't really question why I was doing something until I left that environment, being in Korea. That's when I really started my professional reinvention. I launched my show, I became a speaker, all those, like I launched my own company, all those things. So those were kind of two major transformations happened as a result of being outside of my comfort zone. So that's kind of a long answer to your question. Yeah.
Well, fascinating, because I do want to go back to a few things, because you obviously entered higher education as a professor. So there was something that you bought into in education, or that you wanted to accomplish by doing that. But before you got into that, I'm curious about this idea of you being a child, the only child, having such a hyper focus on education in your family, your parents expecting A's, right, really good grades, and you uncomfortable with the notion of this is the way. The journey of education for you was very, like you said, it was painful, right? It was not.
Mm-hmm.
what did you say to your parents, or how did you express that discomfort or that pain at the time? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think we didn't really talk much, and also like China, at least I when I was a kid, it's like people don't express emotions that much. It's very different from the United States. Here, people even like our nonverbal language very expressive. We use our hands, we use our eyes, facial movement, all those things to express our feelings and emotions. But China and even like Korea and Japan, those three countries I have personally visited, so I can really speak on their behalf. And people don't talk or share their emotions a lot. Like like my parents, for example, they love me, but they never told me they love me. Like in their own language. No, never. And we don't really hug each other, and like hugging or kissing and all those things we don't. It's just very very different. Very I don't know. It's just a different way of expressing like support emotions. So we don't really talk about much, like I just listen. Whatever my parents told me, I listen. I told them I don't like this, but what can I do? I just like, I don't think I feel like I can like I was comfortable talking back to my parents. I tried, but always got yelled at. So I just like, I just took it. This is my fate. So we don't really talk about this. And I don't think my parents and I, we have, my dad and I, we have pretty good relationship, but because my dad is very like soft, but my mom, she's like tiger mother. So I don't think, yeah, oh, exactly. So I don't think we have the best relationship, but over the years, I think, because I am where I am today, so our relationship has become better. But when I was a kid, I don't think we had the best relationship. But again, because every single family was the same, because we knew that my parents and the children were not supposed to be friends. And I just need to listen to my parents, follow their orders, and do what they told me to do, even though we didn't have the best relationship. But that was not a question that we actually discussed. We talked about it. Nobody cared. The only thing was really, education. But I guess
Get it done.
yeah, I guess it worked to a great extent. I came to the United States. I got my PhD. I think this journey to pursue education was definitely a strong influence of being in China. And even nowadays, and many of my friends in China or in Korea, Singapore, like if you hear like parents, the only thing and they talk a lot is really education. Like how can we invest in our children's education? What are the best schools? What are some educational programs? This and that. I don't know if I share this with you. I recently discovered last year because I was preparing for a talk. So I discovered there were like 3-year-old CEO classes in China, which is
CEO classes.
Yeah, which is like extreme, right? But it shows those programs are a reflection of parents, their desire to invest. They just don't know what else to do. Like money is not a concern. They just like give us more. Yeah. So 3-year-old CEO class, like leadership class, and all sorts of like golf, children playing learning how to ride horses, how to play golf at like 3 years old. Yes. And English language classes, like just like you name it. Yeah. That's
phenomenal. I mean, I'm all for good education, especially that will enhance and expand someone's knowledge and experience. I'm curious though, and I love that you really talked about, and I can hear how much you honor your family, right? By you tried to express some dissatisfaction. They weren't hearing it. So you're like, okay, let me just respect the process. So much so that, you got your PhD. But I want to point something out in that dissatisfaction, because I imagine that there are other young people, we're about to start school in the US within a few days or weeks in some cases. And there are individuals, young people, someone out there is not satisfied with the education system or the emphasis of education that their family might have. So I'm curious, what was your performance like in school? Like knowing that this wasn't really how you enjoyed learning, what was not only your performance with your academics, but your interaction with your professors or your classmates? How did that dissatisfaction impact?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think again, I'm not sure about the situation now. Back then, there was no social media, right? So the only interaction I had was with my friends in my immediate environment, the school I attended. I went to pretty good schools, and like I think everyone, we just kind of suffered together. But I have to share with you because it is so competitive. So by the end of high school, I don't think I had any true friends because we treated each other as, I'm competing with this person, which was the message our teachers told us. Like, seriously, China is a huge country, right? It's huge. We have so many people. And there were only like 5 spots, for example, only 5 good universities. You literally had to almost like kill each other to get into that spot. So I remember like middle school and high school, and we were just lying to each other, or did you study last night? Oh, I didn't. Did you know the answer to this question? I didn't. In fact, when everybody studied at night until midnight or past midnight, but we just didn't want to share because we were so afraid. We don't want our peers to be ahead of us because, the message we were told was there were only 5 spots. So I think that was kind of really distorted environment, and we were not as those like, pure, naive, innocent children. No, we became way more sophisticated than we should be at our age. And so my best memories with my friends were actually very young age. And like everyone's just like, oh, really playful. But, as situations have become more and more competitive, I think we were very detached from our authentic self, from our heart. And when I first came to the US, I was like a robot. I couldn't even like cry. I had no tears. Like I couldn't even cry. And like nothing could really touch me that hard, that much to make me cry. You see, that's how much my emotions were killed by this entire like educational system and this super competitive environment. And so one of my friends shared like a TED talk with me, which was Super Chicken. So what that talk was about was like a group of scientists. They have 2 groups of chicken. So one group of chicken is the average chicken. The other one is the super chicken. They perform really well. So they separated them to see how their productivity changes over time, and to lay more eggs or fewer eggs, how they're changing. So it is very interesting. So the super chicken group, and they ended up like killing each other, attacking each other. Only 3 survived. But the average one, they all outperformed where they were when they started the experiment, and they became happier, more productive, and their reproduction rate actually improved. So I think, in terms of my educational environment, it's definitely a super chicken environment. So we didn't really kill each other, of course, attacking each other, but we definitely lost touch with who we were as children at a young age, our authentic human nature. I do believe as humans, we are compassionate. We want to feel good about who we are. We want others to feel good. We have definitely lost touch with that. So it was a journey I share with you. It's a journey. When I first came to the US, it was a journey to rediscover who I was, to activate my emotions, to learn how to cry, to learn how to be a human being, to learn how to feel sorry for others. When I heard something that is so sad, I actually felt like my heart actually felt sad, like, and now I can cry easily. I think because I'm like, I'm alive. Your show is becoming alive. I'm alive. This is like me. But I had to do the work to become alive again. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that work. So you mentioned that you came here at age 20 and you noticed, which I think is really interesting in and of itself, you noticed that you hadn't the emotional range that maybe others in your surrounding had.
Yeah, just a quick story. I think we were watching a movie in the class, and all of my classmates, they were crying. And I even remember one of my classmates, she asked me, this is so sad. Why are you crying? I was like, really? I tried. I can't.
But did you feel sadness, or what exactly was happening? Do you remember?
it's very superficial feeling. I think now, like I'm very in touch with my emotions. Now when I feel sad or happy or excited, the feeling comes from my heart. Like I can feel it. But I think at the time was very superficial. You know, oh yeah, I'm sad. But I can move on quickly to other things. I won't be like, very emotionally affected by this situation. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just I so appreciate you sharing that. 'Cause it's wonderful. We had a show a few weeks ago about being vulnerable, especially in the workplace. And I remember even for myself, I grew up with three brothers. I'm the middle child. You know, I have an older brother and then two younger brothers who are twins. And my dad was in the military. My mom was a school teacher for many years. And for us, crying was not really a mode of expression. That was my experience of it was not acceptable. It's almost like if I cried, I lost.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not competing. If I ended up in tears for some reason, it's like I lost. Somehow there's a loss of status. There's a loss of control. There's some kind of loss. So that's how I equated it for many years. And it really, like you said, that slow coming alive, that awakening. So I want to ask, what was the awakening moment? Like you started to notice that was a different level of expression, but when did it become something that you wanted to transform or that began to transform?
So I think it's just like, I think everything happens slowly, you know, like when I was in China, again, I was very quiet and I didn't really talk much. And then like even that, like, you know, coming to the US, first off, for survival reasons, I was taking communication classes and all of my classmates, everybody's like, blah, 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 blah. I like, even though I did the reading, I had nothing else to talk about. They didn't do the reading. They were like, blah, blah. I was like, wow, that's amazing. I still remember one of my teachers asked me, said, were you okay? Were you following us? You never talk in class. And I actually understood everything. I just didn't know how to express myself because that ability was shut down from a very early age, right? I never learned to express for myself. So that part is a relearning part, you know, and learn to first survive like in my classes to actually say something so that my teachers don't think I was a stupid person, didn't understand what was going on. And then like as I learned to open up, I was like, wow, I really enjoy this. So I think it's not like, okay, I'm going to discover who I was. It's really like maybe kind of reactive to begin with, to reacting to my external environment being so radically different. I first went to Syracuse for my master's degree, and Syracuse, I came from Beijing, which is big city. Syracuse like so small, like there were just so many things I was not used to. So out of that, survival, like you know, also being the only child, I never left China. I never left my parents. And I was at young age. Back then, there was no I don't think I had internet anyway. So I didn't even know what was going on in the US. And it was very different. It's very different from my understanding or my perception of the United States based on, you know, the few movies I watch. Sex and City, American Pie, all those like crazy movies.
Oh my goodness, really? Those?
I know. Those were the things came to China. So I said, wow, this is so different. So because of that, I think just to survive. And I really got homesick and my parents, and I had to change. But the more I kind of forced myself to change, I said, wow, this is actually who I am. So I think that was kind of incrementally, slowly, I was forced to discover and peel the layers of onion, you know, and then eventually be more like, yeah. But I think that was the beginning of the journey. And I think 3 years ago when we came to Korea, that was kind of another major transformation, like to maybe kind of to finish the journey, so to speak, of this self-transformation. So I started my journey, I kind of get to know myself a little bit more, and I definitely became a lot more alive, a lot more authentic. But then, you know, higher education, there are also certain rules and expectations of what you need to do, what you need to say, and how to succeed in this path. So I think that expectation kind of like stopped my journey to fully become alive again. But the journey started. So I think the full journey started a few years ago when I came to Korea, when I was, you know, completely different environment again. As if when I think was almost like when I first came to the United States. In Korea, I didn't have any friend. I didn't know anyone. I was like so free. Like nobody knew who I was. That was the best part. It was very interesting in retrospect to think about how you and I, all of us, we are a product of our social construction, right? If you, whatever industry you are working within, there are social rules, norms. You have to play the game. You have to follow the rules. You have to play the game. But in a different country, like nobody cared. Like there was no rules. I make my own rules. That was so liberating for me to realize that how my identity, my professional aspirations were actually being influenced by what people are supposed to do in higher education. And realizing that was such a breakthrough. It was also a breakdown. I was like, wow, I'm breaking away from my only identity, which was being a college professor. It was challenging. It was like I'm losing who I was. But at the same time, this breakdown leads to a breakthrough. I think it is probably safe to say that I kind of completed my full personal and professional transformation and when I was in Korea. And
wow.
I
have a feeling, I have a feeling there's still so much more. I don't know what the transformation, we never know what the transformation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think.
Like, you mentioned that journey.
Like a new chapter, like starting this new chapter, like the I you see now is me. It's 100% me. And I can tell you it takes no energy for me to be me right now versus the me like inside my heart. It is like the same. So I think in terms of that journey kind of completed. Now there's no gap. The gap is closed.
Oh, I love this. Okay, but I want to, because I want the listeners to kind of hear a little bit about that journey that maybe gloss over a little bit. So tell us about, you have obviously your master's degree. You went to Syracuse for your master's. You studied, what was your subject?
Communication, PR, public relations.
Got it. Oh, just like me, but I don't have a master's. I did PR too. So then from there, you went and got a PhD where?
Maryland, University of Maryland, College Park.
Got it. And also in communication?
Yes, PR, yeah.
All right, fantastic. But then, now I just want to paint this picture. You, a young child, already kind of internally rebelling against the educational system and the pressure and the competition in that environment. The traditional model of education, come to the US, you start to notice some things about the environment there. You start to notice some things about yourself and your reaction to it. You start to break through that shell. But then you go right back into the educational system. So what took you into not only through that education, but also to become a professor?
I think, the true reason it was really because I didn't have the courage to honor my inner voice. And because nobody was doing, because most of my friends who finished the master's degree went on to PhD. And I was trying to be different. I was trying to do something else, but I didn't have the courage to fully honor myself, my inner voice. I was like, maybe that was like, it's not going to work, right? I followed the mainstream. I followed the mass. And, but like, I have to say, because of that, there was something inside me telling me this was like, something was not right. Even though I was pursuing my PhD, I noticed, I was being labeled as the happiest kid in our PhD program. I was like, compared to others, I was happy, but deep inside me, I was like, I don't feel really happy. So I think that was the time I was doing my PhD. When I started working on my dissertation, I really felt like kind of stuck again. I was doing this, but didn't bring me the joy that I was searching for. So I really started a spiritual search. I started like yoga classes. My yoga class teacher introduced me to meditation. So I started meditation. And I discovered a bunch of, I actually discovered the law of attraction and the Secret movie in 2008 when I was working on my dissertation. And I had to say, those things really helped me to kind of complete this journey, even though I wasn't fully enjoying this. But I was happy enough, I guess, to finish this, to keep going. That was one thing. And also, I think the deeper reason was I wasn't brave enough, exactly, to really honor myself. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting though, that dichotomy, that in order to experience joy, and you equate joy to expression, to movement, to, right, some outward manifestation. The way to joy was through stillness. In your
Yeah.
yoga,
Oh,
through
totally. I think, in life, we truly have to master who we are. Unless we master ourselves, we cannot master life. All the answers that we're searching without, the answers start within. Like I share with you, all of my transformations happen as a result of going with, first came to the US, I started to, who I am, what was like, started to search within. And going to Korea, also again, started to search within. What did I want for my professional career? So it all started with it. And I just posted this on Instagram and my different social media channels over the weekend. I truly believe the journey from here to there is us. It is us. And like we can all follow the same principles, the same roadmaps, take classes from the same teacher, but we all have different results, right? So the differentiation factor in our business is us. And so I discovered the more I work on myself, investing in, like, getting to know me at a spiritual level and investing in my own learning, the more my business grows. And this inner journey, we have to transform the inside if we want to transform the outside. I think that is a big missing piece in many people's pursuit of success, so to speak.
I have goosebumps, which is always a good sign. That's my sign for inspiration. That's my sign for inspiration. I couldn't have said it better myself. That was just phenomenal.
And, and even going back to education, and I think this journey to go within is really missing in our educational system. And that's why we have so many students who just feel so depressed, who feel so lost. I don't see a spark in their eyes. I don't see, we're talking about that obsession. What are you really obsessed? But I think to get to that level, you have to know who you are. You have to really, really understand. I discovered my calling is education. If we talk about this, I could talk about this forever, like I'm literally passionate because this is my zone of genius, so to speak. Each of us, we have a zone of genius, but so many of us, we don't do the work to discover that. We just think, I need to do this because, my teacher told me I'm good at this, or my mom, my dad, my society, everybody else told me I should do this. But how about you? We don't really ask that question. And some of us did ask that question in my case, but in my younger age, I didn't have the courage to honor my inner voice. So, I think the beauty of in this day and age with social media, podcasts, and you can hear my story. So I think for me, it's like when I started to listen to other people's stories who really honored inner voice, I was like, wow, if other people can do it, I can do it. And so you really need nobody's permission to start this inner journey and work on yourself and go within. And I think once you really discover that inner zone of genius, your authentic self, if you can somehow align your professional aspiration with that inner authentic self, every day you will be as crazy as me. Seriously, nothing can stop you. Nothing can stop you. There are so many things I don't know, but because of this alignment, because of this inner drive, I'm willing to figure it out. Like I shared with you yesterday, my husband's here. I literally cried. I was like, I'm launching a 2-week immersion program in Singapore, and to really cultivate students' entrepreneurship. I was like, I'm not going to have any students. I felt so stressed out, like what to do. There are going to be emotions like that. Entrepreneur is like roller coaster. It's not flat. But that drive, that alignment, because I know this is my calling. Like this morning, I wake up, everything's fine. I can keep going. But if you are only doing this because your parents told you, or you think this career is going to give you money or influence or fame, whatever, you are not. It's going to be a lot harder to overcome hurdles like that. When you are doubting yourself, you're like, oh my God, I feel like I'm going to give up, or this is too hard, I can't figure this out. No, so by like that drive has to come internally, not externally. Externally, you'll feel tired. You don't feel as motivated as when the drive is coming from internally.
That intrinsic motivation. You said something in our very first conversation that I remember really struck a chord for me. You mentioned that inner zone of genius, right? To find that zone of genius. And you said it's so important to make sure that inner zone of genius is in the driver's seat of our lives, not in the trunk. And that's what I think is
that I said, I don't even remember. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that is in the driver's seat. So it sounds like what you're saying is that inner motivation, that inspiration that we get is what should really drive our behavior, our actions, how we
express. Exactly. Yeah, that's how I think about many entrepreneurs who started their own company. They are so obsessed with a problem and they want to solve that problem, even though they don't know so many things, but because they have that drive to figure that thing out, to really solve that problem, they are willing to figure so many things out or hire others or just work on this. Yeah, so I think that's kind of my situation right now. I'm literally really obsessed with this situation. I want to build my own school. I want to see how my school can make a difference in the education space. Yeah, I'm obsessed with that, and I'm willing to figure out so many small pieces and just like so many smaller things. I'm willing to do that, yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about what is this disruption in education that you'd like to see? What would it look like? What would the experience be for the student and also for the educator?
Yeah, so I think, I worked in higher education for 10 plus years. I think there are so many. I think education is very important. And I think there is also, there is space for people who choose to go through the traditional education. But I think in this day and age, formal education is not the prerequisite for anyone's happiness and success. There are so many different options. So my kind of mission for building my own classroom without walls is to make formal education optional and to give people a different route to pursue education, to be happy, to be successful. So like in our traditional educational environment, so many elements such as emotional intelligence, emotional well-being, digital literacy, digital storytelling, personal branding, financial literacy, and soft skills, and even meditation, all those things I think are so important, but are not being prioritized in our traditional educational system. And I also discovered I can have a much stronger ripple effect being outside of the system than being inside the system, because the institution is so strong. As I'm trying to change them, they are trying to change me. And so that's how I decided to resign from my job to build my own school. So the first program is going to be a 2-week immersion program in Singapore to cultivate students' entrepreneurship. So it is almost like an edutainment event. So I have speakers, it's like a conference. There will be learning at the same time. There will also be sightseeing, traveling, and visiting local entrepreneurs, startup companies. I love Singapore. It is like a mini San Francisco. And so I'm going to invite speakers from a few different countries to talk about digital literacy, personal branding. I also have digital mentors for people who don't want to travel, but they have something really important to share, like financial literacy. Yeah, so that's kind of like my first signature program. I'm really excited, to
What's
launch.
What's the age group that you're focusing on?
For high school and college students. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, probably some adults out there who've already finished their education. They're like, "Oh, Singapore sounds awesome."
Yeah, and I also want to, like, if families they want to join this program, so they can also join as a family, which will make it a bit cheaper because they can stay in the same room. Yeah, and eventually, and maybe even young professionals. And whoever can benefit or want to embark on this journey to become an entrepreneur, but don't know how to get started, where to get started, they have an idea. So this program is to really train them to think like an entrepreneur, to have the necessary skills to get started.
And why do you think that that's so important for for students to learn these days? Like you have a very specific curriculum, like you mentioned, everything from emotional intelligence to financial literacy and everything in between. What is it about those particular items or subject matters that you feel are so important to you?
Yeah, such a great question, because I think our, education space, our career, the future of job is so different from how, when I was pursuing my career, everyone was trying to go to a school in my case, or go to find a 9 to 5 job. But I think situation has changed now. Like I'm embracing the gig economy and having multiple stream of income. I think that's going to be the future. More and more schools are going to hire like part-time teachers, and companies that are going to hire part-time consultants. You have this set of expertise. Why don't you come here to help us solve this problem? So I don't have to worry about like insurance, all those things. Once you finish and we are embarking on a new project, I can bring in new people. So I think that's the future. And also students, instead of learning facts and information, which they can easily learn from Google, from YouTube, and there are so many, Forbes have their own online school, and Khan Academy, online open courses, and many social media agencies, they have their own online certifications, immersion programs. I think that is the future of education, right? Like people are getting all those certifications from different places, and students need to embrace that. And they also need to besides learning facts and information, to really master the cycle of knowledge, to learn, unlearn, and relearn. Like if you think about our personal journey, it is also a journey to deconstruct who we are and reconstruct who we are. Learning is the same, because the information they learn at school is going to be misinformation by the time they graduate, because things change so fast. So I really want students to really embrace this entrepreneurial mindset, to think like an entrepreneur, to have the courage to figure things out, right? So those are important skills to me, other than facts and information, and to really master this cycle of knowledge. And the reason I wanted to do this in Singapore was really because one thing is Singapore, they have lots of entrepreneurs, startup companies. That is definitely the reason. And the second, which is a more important reason, is to really force our students to be in an unfamiliar environment, to be outside of their comfort zone. Because as I shared with you, when you are outside of your comfort zone, you discover who you are. You embark on this inner journey. And in fact, I actually did lots of research in this area, and I read so many articles published on different, Forbes magazine, Entrepreneur Inc. magazine, and all those people, they were citing studies which have proved when students, they are traveling or studying abroad, being outside of their comfort zone, they are more likely to become an entrepreneur, to start their own company. And even if they are not thinking about starting their own company, they are a lot more original and creative and, resilient. So all those, I think, are much, much more important than learning, specific tactics, facts, and information.
I couldn't agree more. I think in my own family of origin, we spent a lot of time challenging traditional education. My father was in the military, so we immigrated from Panama originally in Latin America. We moved to the U.S., had a lot of different experiences, and I think what I came down to, the level of experiences that we had made such an impact in who we became as human beings, because it wasn't just exposure. It wasn't just like we saw this and we saw that when you travel. When you have to learn a new language, in our case, we had to learn a new language. We had to learn new games. We had to learn new
totally
to read, foods to eat. There were so music to listen to. There were so many things that we had to experience that transformed who we became. That made a huge impact. And then even on my own, after I graduated from college, I went to work for an organization called Up With People, International Leadership Program. And then the 5 years I worked for the organization, lived with 400 host families, got an opportunity to perform, to do community service in so many places. So what you just said about having that outside experience, that outside of the comfort zone, there's so much growth to be had. There's so much aliveness. And you're right, I did identify more of who I was. The contrast, we need contrast.
Frame of reference, exactly. Like what we
Oh,
discussed earlier, being an
yeah.
only child, I didn't understand what it meant until I came to the US. I said, wow, you guys have so many kids in the family. So that gave me, a different frame of reference. I started to question, oh, okay. So what I went through was actually not normal, or not normal, not the only way. Yeah.
That's the only way, exactly. So first of all, so I'm curious, I have a lot of educators in my family. Two of my brothers are high school. Well, one is a high school teacher. The other one is going into elementary school teaching. My mother was a former elementary school teacher and also doing some substitute teaching.
That's amazing, yeah.
I educate professionals, right, in leadership development. So I'm curious let's talk about educators for a moment. You have your own personal transformation that led to this journey you're on. There are so many people in North America that are going to embark in a new school year. What message would you say is important for them to know as they're going into?
A lot.
Yeah.
So I think the first is, and I think we have come to a day and age, teachers, they need to build their personal brands, seriously. And I shared with you at the beginning of our interview, I read this article, which was a prediction made by business school at Harvard University. A business school professor. So he predicted 50% of American colleges are going bankrupt in the next 10 to 12 years. That is a high number. So can you think about all those schools going bankrupt? How about the teachers? What are they going to do, right? So I believe every single person, regardless of you are working in the education industry or in other different industries, we always need to invest in our personal brand. And we need to have a personal brand because I think this stable job or job security, this 9 to 5, you can work at this place until you die. I mean, like, I think that age is almost over. And like disruptions are happening constantly. So you always have to be prepared. What's next for me? What if this is not going to last as long as I plan? What should I do? Really embracing this, start social media is free. It's so powerful, connecting people, collapsing time and space to share your story. You need nobody's permission to share your story. You need nobody's permission to build an online brand. If you can just like get started and show up consistently, and I promise you that you will build a community. And if you keep offering quality content, and you are going to grow, and you will start to be able to monetize this online presence. It is so amazing. And I think teachers need to be prepared for some radical changes. I think in the next 2 or 3 decades in terms of our education space. And so I think they need to start to invest in building their personal brand. So that is one.
I like what you're talking about in the future, for them to really start thinking ahead to where this passion for education could be rerouted.
Exactly.
When you were in the classroom, what were some things, just to give them a little bit of practical sense, what were some things that you did to build your brand when you were in the classroom that a teacher may be able to do?
Yeah, so actually that's my second point. I think, for teachers, whatever you teach, I truly believe if we want to prepare our children for the future, teachers, we have to become practitioners because information is being updated constantly. We cannot teach by the book, which is what I used to do, teaching by the book. But like by the time a book is published, everything's already outdated. So the only way for a teacher to be able to teach students cutting edge trends, strategies, tactics, whatever subject matter that we teach is to be really immersed in the industry. So I wish, like more school leaders really believe in this so that they can offer more support to our teachers to maybe reduce their workload in certain aspects and to give them the room, the space, the resources that they need to develop themselves professionally. And I think unless we change that, there are going to be more and more alternative schools to threaten the traditional education space because we have way too many educators who are just teachers. And because of that, we are doing a disservice to our students. And as a result of that, students are not going to find jobs. And because of that, and more students are going to pursue alternative education. So I don't think this is teachers' fault, because I'm a teacher myself. We are bombarded with so many things, paperwork, this and that. I think, the change has to start from the top. That we have to have a buy-in from school leaders, admins, to really start to understand how everything is being disrupted and being radically changed and challenged. So they need to see in the future, even for school to keep having students, their teachers somehow need to have a personal brand. So if my children are going to take a social media class, we are going to Google this teacher. Is this teacher actually a practitioner? If not, why do I want to send my kid to the school to learn from this teacher who has never run a social media campaign, has never run his or her business before to learn social media marketing? It's not going to happen. I can send my kid to maybe, there are so many social media agencies I know, they have their own programs, much cheaper. At the same time, students are learning from professionals who have a strong brand. I can go to their LinkedIn, check them out. They are doing this, they have the social proof to back up their degree, so to speak. So I think schools, they need to understand that. They need teachers to be able to back up other than having a terminal degree, but they need their professional experience to back up their academic degrees. But I think that is a big missing link in our education. I don't know when this will happen, but I think as more people like me building our schools, there are literally thousands of alternative schools I discovered. So all those people, we are joining forces to threaten, maybe it's not a good word, but to really force the traditional educational system to change.
Ooh, man, I can feel the flames. I can feel the sparks flying. Okay, so that's the message for the teacher. Build your personal brand. Go out there and become a practitioner of your passion. I think there's so many teachers that go into education because of the passion they have for their children, or the passion they have for the subject matter. But become a practitioner. Find a way to practice what you preach. Love, love, love. Okay, now let's talk about students a little bit. You have little ones yourself. How old are your kids?
5 and 8.
5 and 8, so they're school age. Now, just like you, there was probably a moment in time, right? Although you had a very specific educational system in your background, that there was something that in you started to notice that you wanted to be a different type of learner, or a different type of learning environment. What advice do you give students? Like, what would you want your kids to do in the classroom if they don't have the kind of environment that you just talked about teachers create?
Yeah. So I definitely think, like education, I think Mark Twain said that don't let education interfere with learning. And I think like so many parents, they just completely outsource education to the school. And they think, teachers, they're going to take care of everything. Or when they talk to their children, like listen to the teacher. Like, I don't think that's the case. I'm a teacher, I'm a human, I make mistakes. And especially during the early stage of my teaching career, I frequently pretended I knew this. I was like, I actually didn't know, but I was afraid to say no, or say, I know what, guys, I actually don't know this. And so don't just listen to the teachers, do your homework, and don't completely outsource education. Your own children, right? You need to invest in their education and actually understand what is going on. And another, I think, piece of advice I have for parents is, so many parents, they are so afraid of technology. And they either just give their kids iPad, all those, whatever you do, or they just ban everything. Don't even touch this thing. And but I think those are not good approaches. And I think technology, which is what I'm trying to show my own children, especially my older one, you can use this to play games for sure, right? They love games. But look, you can also use this to do so much more than playing computer games, than posting selfies, this and that. You can actually use this as learning, career building, networking, like having conversations like this. But I think parents, we need to show our kids and let them have conversations with other teachers to show them the potential. Don't just either ban this or just have their own children completely take control of, how many hours, like, oh, you can play this iPad for 2 hours, for example. But I think you need to go further than that. Like, what are you going to do with this 2 hours? Are you just going to watch like cartoons or playing games? Be a little more invested and try to educate yourself and show your children like this is an amazing tool that you can actually build to use to share stories, maybe even change other people's lives. I just came back from VidCon conference in San Francisco last month, and I saw so many young children, like 10 years old, 12 years old, having their own YouTube channel to talk about meaningful changes to inspire next generation, whatever they are doing. It is so encouraging to see those young content creators are actually using technology to share their stories, to try to make humanity a better place and bring humanity together. I think that is another way to educate our kids to really become digitally literate, to help them to train their digital literacy beyond using this to play games.
Oh my goodness. I mean, we could talk all day long. Like, you're right. This subject of education, I can see everything that you just shared also applies to the workforce, applies to professionals and how we as professionals build our personal brand, how we become practitioners, right? How we serve the public with the products or services that we sell. Oh, there's so much, I think, wrapped up in there. I want to make sure that before, as we're wrapping up here, that you share with people how they can follow you. And you obviously are writing, you're obviously talking about the subject, and there's so many things that you're doing that can help activate this. Where could they find you? And I'll make sure I put the link as well in the notes.
Yeah, so my social media handle is the same across different social media platforms. It's my name, AIADDYSONZHANG, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram. I'm everywhere. And please join my weekly live streaming show on every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. Central time, and 2 p.m. Pacific time. And I interview leading social media digital marketers to talk about social media and digital marketing and entrepreneurship. So it is an online classroom, almost like, yeah. But in this classroom, we're both teachers and students.
Yes. I think in life, we're both teachers and students.
Amen. Yes.
It's exactly what we sometimes need to learn most. I'm so honored, Dr. I. So honored that you took some time out this morning to be with us and share your passion for education, share and help us see your zone of genius.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, encouraging us to find our own zone. And I think, if a 10-year-old can start personal branding and really get clear on who they are, imagine the impact that they can have on this planet.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I love everything that you're doing. I really do. I just want to appreciate that so much. And then for the rest of you that are listening, please share this conversation with family and friends. This is the kind of thing that really helps bring life to education. I love what you said, that quote by Mark Twain, don't let education get in the way of learning. So part of it is, don't let us take over this whole idea of going back to school with the same old. Like, bring a different level of awareness to your family about what you're really trying to learn. What is this experience of education supposed to bring to your life, your family, to your community, to your society? There's so much there. So thank you again, Dr. I, for bringing that and making that present to us. Next week, everyone, on our program Time to Come Alive, we're going to have another guest on August 13th. We're going to talk a bit about a sobering topic, actually. Teresa Snyder, who's also has a podcast, a fellow podcaster like you and I, and she's an influencer. She's ready to really start to reveal a little bit more about how she came out of some of her emotional darkness and the impact that emotional darkness had on her life. And at this stage in the game, what she's doing about it. So really excited to have her on the show as well. Such an exciting roller coaster today in and of itself. Thank you all so much for joining us. Appreciate you. Find ways to come alive and shake things up in your life. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, wonderful evening, wonderful morning, everyone. Bye.